Rome conquered the world, and they did it with clothes washed in pee. I want you to picture the most powerful empire in human history. Roads connecting continents, aqueducts bringing fresh water into cities, courts of law, architecture that still stands 2,000 years later. Rome was, by every measure, a civilization that had figured things out. And every morning, some of its most fashionable citizens would wake up, walk over to a clay jar in the corner, and rinse their mouth out with urine. Then they'd go drop off their best toga at the laundry, where it would be washed in urine, by a guy stomping on it with his bare feet, in a vat of urine. This is not a joke. This is not an exaggeration. This was Tuesday in ancient Rome, a completely normal, totally unremarkable part of daily life in one of history's greatest civilizations. And once you understand why they did it, you'll realize something genuinely unsettling. They weren't wrong. In ancient Rome, if you needed your clothes cleaned, you took them to a fullonica. Think of it as a laundromat. Except instead of detergent, the main cleaning agent was aged human urine. And instead of a spin cycle, there was a person. The workers, called fullones, would fill large stone vats with a mixture of water and stale, fermented urine. Then they'd climb in and stomp on the clothes, over and over, for hours. This technique even had an official name, insaltatio, literally, the fuller's jump. Fermented just means the urine had been sitting out long enough to break down chemically. Fresh urine is mostly water, but after it sits for a while, the urea in it converts into ammonia. And ammonia is where the cleaning magic happens. We'll get to exactly why in a second. After the stomping, the clothes were rinsed, stretched, brushed, sometimes with the skin of a hedgehog, dried on a rooftop terrace, and returned to the customer. White. Clean. Impeccably pressed. Reeking of nothing because ammonia is actually quite volatile, it evaporates fast. And the Romans weren't remotely embarrassed about any of this. The Fullonica of Stephanus in Pompeii, one of the best preserved examples, buried by Vesuvius in 79 AD, sat right on one of the city's busiest streets, the Via dell'Abbondanza, prime real estate, the ancient equivalent of a strip mall on a main road. This wasn't a back alley operation. It was a thriving, respectable business, right there in public. Okay, so here's the part where this goes from gross historical trivia to, wait, that's actually kind of genius. The active ingredient in urine-based cleaning was ammonia. Ammonia is a natural chemical that acts as a base, meaning it's the opposite of acidic. Dirt, grease, and body oils that get stuck in fabric, they're all slightly acidic. When you put a base up against an acid, they neutralize each other. The grease basically dissolves and releases from the fabric. That's it. That's the whole trick. It's the same reason your grandma's old-school cleaning spray has ammonia in it. Romans discovered this principle about 2,000 years before it showed up in a spray bottle under your kitchen sink. Now add the stomping, which did the same job as the agitator in a modern washing machine, physically working the ammonia solution through every fiber of the fabric, and you actually have a pretty effective industrial laundry process. And if you think about what Romans were cleaning, togas were enormous, thick, all-white wool garments. Wool is notoriously hard to clean. Keeping it white in a city of 1 million people with no running water in most homes, no soap as we know it, and Mediterranean summer heat, ammonia in fermented urine was basically the only thing strong enough to do the job. Here's where the logistics get almost impressively organized. The fullonicae didn't just collect urine from their own workers, they needed industrial quantities. So they put clay collection jars on street corners all over the city. Anyone passing by, residents, visitors, merchants, could relieve themselves into the jar. When the jar was full, it was carried to the nearest fullonica. Think of it as ancient recycling infrastructure. Instead of a blue bin for cardboard, it was a big clay pot for something else. Same basic idea. You use it, someone else benefits. And it worked. 11 fullonicae have been discovered in Pompeii alone, a city of maybe 20,000 people. That's roughly one industrial urine laundry for every 1,800 residents. That's actually a higher laundry-to-resident ratio than most modern American cities. The business was so successful, so essential, so profitable, that the Roman government decided it needed a cut. Around 70 AD, Emperor Vespasian was in a bind. Rome's treasury was drained. There had just been a civil war, what historians call the Year of the Four Emperors, and the previous ruler, Nero, had left the finances in shambles. Vespasian needed money. Badly. So he started taxing everything he could think of, and he looked at the urine collection industry, this massive, profitable, citywide network of jars and laundries and buyers, and thought, yeah, that too. He introduced the vectigal urinae, literally, the urine tax. Vectigal is Latin for a type of state revenue or toll. So vectigal urinae is just pee toll. Rome had a pee toll. Vespasian's own son, Titus, who would later become emperor himself, thought this was deeply undignified. He complained to his father directly. "This is embarrassing. You're taxing urine, Dad." Vespasian didn't argue. He picked up a gold coin, held it under Titus's nose, and asked, "Does this smell?" Titus said no. Vespasian said, "Yet it comes from urine. Pecunia non olet." Money does not stink. That phrase, born from a Roman emperor defending his pee tax, is still used today. In business, in finance, in political debates about where money comes from and whether the source taints the value. France named public urinals after him. They were called Vespasiennes for centuries. The man taxed bodily waste and got a proverb and a street fixture named after him. That is a legacy. We have to talk about the teeth, because it wasn't just laundry. Romans also used urine as mouthwash and teeth whitener. And somehow, this one is worse, because laundry is a thing you do to objects. Mouthwash is a thing you do to your own face, voluntarily, on purpose. The logic was the same. Ammonia breaks down stains, acts as a disinfectant, and the alkaline environment actually does kill certain bacteria. Bacteria generally thrive in a certain pH range, kind of like how plants need a certain soil acidity to grow. Ammonia shifts the pH in your mouth to a range where a lot of harmful bacteria can't survive, so it genuinely works as an antiseptic. Modern mouthwashes use different chemicals to achieve the same effect, without, the obvious downside. Roman poet Catullus, one of Rome's most famous writers, even mocked a man for having conspicuously white teeth. The implication being, anyone with teeth that white is clearly doing some serious urine rinsing. It was backhanded in a very specific, very Roman way. And here's the really wild part. They even had premium urine for this. The Romans believed that urine imported from the Iberian Peninsula, modern-day Spain, was stronger and more effective than local Roman urine. They called it Celtiberian urine. They imported it specifically for dental use. There was apparently a market for imported, foreign, premium urine for your teeth. So here's where we land. Ancient Rome, the civilization that gave us concrete, legal codes, indoor plumbing, and the calendar you still use, also built an entire industrial economy around human urine. They used it to clean their clothes, their teeth, and their city. They taxed it. They imported the premium variety. They wrote poetry referencing it. They stomped on it barefoot for a living and charged good money for the service. And the punchline is, it worked. The ammonia in aged urine genuinely cleans fabric. It genuinely acts as a disinfectant. It genuinely breaks down stains. The Romans didn't know the chemistry, they just knew that it worked, and they built an empire-scale infrastructure around it. Next time you squirt some Windex on your counter, or gargle with Listerine, or throw a Tide Pod in your laundry. Same basic chemical principles, just significantly less Roman.